there are risks and there are challenges. One is that sort of the first stage when you discover something is that you might discover something, but you have no idea what it means. That's these variants of unknown significance. That's sort of legion with this new era of the genome, where we have, the ability to do sequencing. It's really gotten so cheap. I mean, for thousands of dollars, the first reference genome, I think, took billions. You can now sequence a genome really for thousands, soon to be, I think, $1,000 is the goal, and it's coming up, not that long from now. So we can do the technology, but we don't understand the data we're getting. We can't really analyze it very well. So you can return to someone this information that you have, a variation in this gene, but so that's really the huge challenge. I mean, it's not so complicated even to physically or virtually return the information through the web, or give someone information in a conversation. It's trying to interpret the information and trying to interpret it in a way that's meaningful. And there are a lot of schools of thought about that. One is, when someone donates their tissue for research or is involved in a clinical trial and there's a result, if they want to hear it, it's their tissue, it's their body, it's their, they've consented, they have a right to hear that, and they should be entitled to choose to hear that, and then they should be able to hear that. The other side of the coin is, we're really uncomfortable giving out information that we have no clue really what we're saying or what we mean. And so is there a way to tell someone something that doesn't provoke more anxiety and cause more harm? I mean, ultimately, it's do no harm, right? That's what we ultimately want to do. We want to make sure that we're protecting people. And so if you tell them, yeah, you have a variant in this gene, variants in this gene have been associated with a horrible disease, but maybe that variant actually could confer a benefit, or maybe that variant doesn't have any functional significance. But just telling them they have a variant in a gene that's been associated with a disease, I mean, how useful is that? And do we really want to go down the path of giving out information that's so unclear? And do we have an ethical obligation to give it to people who ask for it? So as I said, there are various schools of thought about that. It's still a very controversial field, and I think that there probably isn't a single answer. It depends.
So I imagine, is there a back room at the NIH where you and some other people are sitting at a table talking and arguing and about this issue? I mean, how does it
with
work?
Cigars, right?
Yeah, I want to know, what is that? I mean, how do you address this?
Not at all. I mean, I wish it were that sort of contained, but it's not. We address it in conversations that arise, because someone calls me up and says, I don't know what to do in this consent form. What do you think? And it's not like I tell them, here's what you got to do. It's like I tell them, well, here are the considerations. Because there isn't, this gets back to what I said about the difference between law school thinking and science thinking. There isn't necessarily a best answer. And there's usually here are things to think about for you to arrive at a decision. Sometimes I'll even say it sounds like from what you're telling me, you might want to go in this direction, but here are a whole lot of reasons why that might not be the best thing. It's very rare that I can give a concrete answer. It's one of the things that is frustrating about my job, but it's also one of the things that's most interesting and, keeps it endlessly fascinating.
Well, it seems that if people are left to interpret on their own the path that they might take, then you will have different places doing different things.
So that's true, and that might not necessarily be a bad thing. The kinds of things that you would do in an observational cohort study in terms of collecting biospecimens and returning research results might be very different than the kinds of things you would do in, say, a targeted genetic study where you have a rare disease population and families that all know each other and an investigator who goes to their homes for dinner. And, so I don't think it's such a bad thing necessarily that you have different answers in different contexts. Context is really key. There's concern in the community about wanting to have consistency and have standards of care that are accepted across the board. And while that's true in medical practice, I think it's less true with some of these ethical dilemmas. And it's probably appropriate that there are different answers for different populations and different types of studies. The key is to make sure that the participants who are involved in the research understand what the choices are and have accepted them if they've enrolled in the research. And that's, I think, the greater challenge is for us to be able to make sure that whatever the options we're making available, people understand them and agree to them.